Alright, how do again, guys? Just moments later, as promised. So still here at the Virginia Memorial. Dedicated in 1917, this memorial honors Virginians who fought and died here. Near the spot, Confederate General Robert E. Lee watched his men's final assault at Gettysburg. Pickett's charge. So, for the few of you who have never been to this park, the Virginia Monument, i.e. the Robert E. Lee Monument, is placed here for a very particular reason. You know, there's other shrines to Virginia near here as well. Longstreet's monument is just, I think, down that way. And the Longstreet Tower is just a little bit further down West Confederate Ave. This is a really cool display here. Excuse me. It's a map of Gettysburg, obviously. And it also depicts a lot of the important sites in the area. So Emmitsburg Road, which is right up there, kind of separates this area from Cemetery Ridge. Abraham Bryan Farm, which lies at the end of Cemetery Ridge. Copse of trees, as we know, in the high water mark marks the spot where the Confederates advanced to. And I've probably read this for you guys before. Let me show you a little of the artwork here. Pretty neat. I always like the artwork. Storm of battle, July 3rd, 1 p.m. through 3 p.m. 1 p.m. on July 3rd, approximately 100 Confederate cannon opened fire on Cemetery Ridge and Cemetery Hill, 1 mile to your front. Federal artillery responded. This thunderous bombardment, a prelude to the Confederate assault known as Pickett's Charge, lasted nearly 2 hours and was heard miles away. I mean, it was heard in nearby towns, guys. It was the biggest barrage of artillery, they say, in the Western Hemisphere ever. At 3 p.m., Confederate General Robert E. Lee watched his battle line. Nearly 12,000 Confederate infantrymen step out across these open fields towards Union troops on Cemetery Ridge. Federal artillery and musketry pelted the advancing Southerners with lead and iron, killing and mangling hundreds, but they pressed forward into the storm of battle. A few hundred Confederates reached Cemetery Ridge, clashing in hand-to-hand combat. Within an hour, it was over. Nearly half of the 12,000 had fallen. Pickett's charge had failed. So it really should say killing and mangling thousands. I've addressed a whole lot of this already, guys. So, you know, there's debate about, you know, not just the Battle of Gettysburg in general, but, you know, every single action, the more you study it, there aren't just a couple really controversial parts about the battle, you know, like, say, for a good example, Dan Sickles's moving his corps forward. When you really study Gettysburg, you find that there's controversy or some debate amongst the nerds, at least, behind almost every action in the battle. And of course, the question that comes up here regarding Pickett's charge is, what, you know, again, what was Lee thinking? Well, first of all, he had some success in attacking the flanks. Not total success, of course. Not total success at all. But there was, I guess you would say, limited success in attacking both the left and right flanks. He didn't smash them or destroy them, but some folks would say he softened them up a bit. So his strategy was really a classic strategy in military actions. You know, it's not quite a pincer movement, but he tries to soften up the right flank, he tries to soften up the left flank, and then he tries to smash through the center. Couple things to know. Obviously he had 12,000 troops, but it's important to remember that I'd say a majority of those troops were in pretty bad shape. I can't quote you the exact number of reserves that he had, if there were any at that point, but there were quite few. Most of the troops who were making the charge up the ridge and across the Emmitsburg Road during Pickett's charge were anywhere between, you know, exhausted and a little roughed up to really beaten up and in pretty bad shape. Now mind you, these are the Rebs we're talking about, and their spirit always exceeds or quite often exceeds their physical condition or their circumstances, and there's a lot to be said for that. But at the end of the day, it's not going to guarantee you a victory in a battle. You know, and there's some that just there's some that say that Lee really thought that he could do it. This I have to disagree with, and I'm not sure what they base their reasoning on. Could be post-war statements, after action battle report, and while he may have said words to this effect, you know, that you know, you have to remember who the audience is. The audience, for a very short time until he was became a fugitive, would have included Jefferson Davis and a very, very small handful of other people that he either answered to or were in some way kind of running the show. So he has to defend himself, right? You know, he can't just say, oh, well, I didn't think there was any hope at all, but I just gave it a go anyways, right? Lee was a, I don't want to say, you know, I don't want to glorify the guy excessively, but I just think it's safe to say that he was a bit smarter than that. If it comes down to desperation, I think, again, as I've mentioned in many other videos, the desperation had to do not with this particular battle per se, or this particular part of the Battle of Pickett's charge, but I think it had to do with just time in general. This was his second major attempt at invading the North, his second excursion across the Mason-Dixon, and he really, really didn't want to come up empty-handed here. So it may have been something of a desperate attempt on day 3. Don't forget, they had a lot of success on day 1, and there was mixed success on day 2. So you can't quite call the guy crazy for attempting Pickett's charge on day 3, although, you know, you can certainly make the case that it may not have been too wise. Well, here we go. I thought my men were invincible. Robert E. Lee gambled and lost. Pickett's charge on July 3rd, a decisive defeat, ended 3 days of fighting. Total casualties of 51,000 to 23,000 Union and 28,000 Confederate. Devastated both sides, so 23,000 Union and 28,000 Confederate. Lee prepared for a Union attack on July 4th, but none came, so as I've said before, he remained in the area. Casualties were high, supplies and ammunition low, so Lee's army retreated to Virginia. It turned out to be a really good thing they stuck around for that extra day, because after that the rains came, which helped them make their way. You know, it slowed down both armies during Lee's retreat, but and it swallowed the Potomac, as we know. So it really slowed him down, but it also slowed down the Union. Rain fell in blinding, here we go. Rain fell in blinding sheets, matching the somber mood as the 17-mile wagon train of supplies and wounded, escorted by General Imboden's cavalry, pulled out. The rest of Lee's battered army trudged behind. No large-scale Union attack prevented the retreat, and on July 14th, the Confederate Army was on Virginia soil. The Gettysburg campaign was over, but the war continued on. Again, I've addressed Meade's tepid pursuit of Lee. I guess we can just call it that. You know, it's really not a criticism. Could it have been more aggressive? Quite possibly. Did he also have good reasons for being a little bit cautious and you know, being just almost sheer out of supplies? Yes, that's also true. Anyways, guys, it's amazing how fast the time goes by. I'm up just past 10 minutes already. So this is the last video. I hate to leave, but I got to go back to work and face the general. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed. I kind of wish I could have shot a little bit more for you, but it was what it was. You know, I missed out on the first just because of the rain. But anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed everything, and I will see you again soon.